And good morning. We are back with Money Talks, the maybe someday in the future award-winning WASBO webinar. May 30th, can you believe it? Guys, it's June 1st on Sunday. High school graduation's going on all over the place. It is such a great time of year. So I'm excited about it. Um, so we're going to talk this morning about state budget for 25-27 a little bit and some of the issues around that. And we're going to talk about planning out your business office work for the summer. If you want to have a good summer, you got to plan it, right? So Brian and Andy are both veterans and know how to do that well. So to join our team this morning, our usual co-hosts, Brian Adesso, the Director of Business Services at Manesha, and Andy Weiland, the Business Manager at Oregon. So guys, good morning. How's it going?
Morning, Mike.
Well,
Yeah, well, anxious to knock off some of these state budget topics. We're in this weird period where, yeah, wait, right? We're in this sort of period where the state budget seems to go from being very public with all these hearings. And I have to say, the K-12 community on finance and on instructional issues was super well represented at these hearings across the state. But then all of a sudden, it kind of goes underground. And that seems to be where it's at right now. And then it'll just pop up again after all these deals get cut. Remember last time? It was around, I don't know, around June 10th. All of a sudden, it was like, oh, we have a state budget. It's like, okay. You get an A for efficiency and an F for transparency. So that just happened, and I hope it doesn't go quite that way again. But that's kind of where we're at with the state budget. Oh, there's the WASBO mission, and we're going to try to come close to that today. Here's your team, and just a reminder that when we're on here opining about state budget and other items, we're not lobbyists and we're not attorneys, and this is not a lobbying effort. None of us really enjoy the state budget, to be honest with you. We just suffer through it like you all do. And again, it's just veteran perspectives on how to get through all this work. So,
I like to say my hair looks a lot better than your guys' hair in that picture. I mean, I've got a nice volume there going
yes.
on. You guys are
Volume,
close, you know.
it's true.
Your time will come, Brian. Your time will come.
Right. And your tie is slightly askew there, Brian. I just want to
Oh, it is.
so
That's embarrassing. Maybe
yeah.
Ryan can digitally move that.
Yeah. Do you know how little I have to worry about a windy day? Like, I don't worry about it at all. You do. So there you go. That's on you.
All that hair product you have to buy.
That's right. So, we always put in a goofy cartoon with each one of these. I am very excited about Budget Crunch cereal. I think this we are announcing today. This is the official breakfast cereal of WASBO, and I think this could open up a whole range of interesting possibilities around budget. We can have budget crumble as the official dessert of WASPO and all sorts of other things that we'll be working on a full menu of this going forward, along with a list of cocktails that we could probably name after the budget as well. We might not want to do that just yet this morning. So budget crunch cereal, that seems to be the mood. All right, let's get into this legislative stuff. First of all, if you don't regularly check out the SAA blog, just written by Dee Paddock, you should check that out. It requires now a password. So if you're not sure how to do that, just give SAA a call and they'll show you how to do that. It's worth keeping up to date on. So this is a kind of an array of topics. And as you can probably tell, the entire graphics department here at Money Talks took the week off. So we just put them all on one slide. So uh, there you go. All right. So as to the state budget process itself, Joint Finance Committee seems to be working from the outside in, taking care of a lot of smaller topics these days. They haven't gotten at the really big stuff. And public ed funding is the biggest of the big stuff. So there's really not a lot that people who matter, have said or done about it yet. It's all in this sort of murky state of suspended animation. We'll see. But there are some issues around it, around the state budget that I thought we could comment on this morning. And I'll take a shot at the first one. And I'm not
No,
sure.
but just with the joint finance, I do think that, we're in a weird time of the budget process now that, like you said, it is really quiet.
Yeah.
But there are legislators out there poking us for maybe solutions to a problem that we don't need solved. And it seems like those are items that get put into the negotiation for like, here's a win, like it's like the quid pro quo thing. You need to so much to give up. And it's like now it's kind of like this time that we can easily shoot ourselves in the foot by saying the wrong thing or going off message. Because they'll just latch onto that, which is a good lead into what you're going to talk about, Mike, in the next line item.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, look, just keep it simple. We're advocating for 60% reimbursement on special ed categorical. And while that's a big lift, it's not our fault. The legislature neglected that line item for more than like literally a decade. They didn't put a dime into it. And then the last couple of years, they've made some small incremental progress, but it hasn't really happened. I mean, the percentage hasn't really moved upward as they originally promised because it's a sum certain, it's not a sum sufficient. So yeah, they've created this big problem around the high cost around special ed categorical. So the first one I wanted to talk about was this sort of distractor type of issue. It's kind of the dark art of legislative bargaining is to create and get enthusiasm around some other thing that kind of looks like what you're asking for. In this case, we've heard from many people that legislators have been, like you said, Brian, trial ballooning this idea of, well, we really can't do much for you on the special ed categorical aid, in terms of increasing the percentage. But hey, we've got a deal for you, which is when you hold on to your wallet. And it's like, why don't we just focus on increasing the high cost special ed pool of dollars so we can fund those up to 90%? And this is like literally trading an apple for an apple orchard, right? Special ed categorical is a much bigger and much more important issue for funding, not just special ed, but general ed as well. And so just be aware it's a distractor and it's a tricky one because it sounds a little bit like what we're asking, only in the sense that lightning and lightning bug sound similar, but they're two very different things, right? So high cost special ed it's a distractor and it's not something that we're interested in. So keep your eye on the ball, which is special ed 60%.
Mike, I just want to emphasize that a little bit more from a real world, experience, and maybe Andy, you could share if you know. But like Monash is like right around 20% special ed, which is like in the top 10 in the state for special ed population. So we have a really high population. It's over 600 kids. And out of those 600 kids, we have, well, in the past, we've maybe claimed for five kids that are high cost. So, I mean, 'cause they need to get above that $30,000 threshold. So it sounds great in theory, but if you don't have a ton of kids in placements and things, and yes, I'll be trying some different techniques this next year to see if I can get more people up into high cost, but it's still not going to be, it's it's a small fraction of the kids. And yes, they're high cost, but they're not, we don't have $1 million, $1 million kid. They're 100,000, maybe 150. So I mean, we just have to be focused here, like the majority of our kids wouldn't fall under that, where the 60% would benefit the majority of our kids.
We're exactly the same way. We're maybe not quite that high as a percentage, but we've actually grown quite a bit this year. So yeah, it's but again, most of those kids aren't going to hit the high cost level, and so that's why it'd be much better from a statewide perspective as far as distributing these funds to go through the categorical.
Right.
And I do want to say, I'll speak for Andy, both of us our districts aren't over-identifying just to get the aid. Because both Andy and I know, we know how to do math, like we're not getting the dollar for dollar. Plus, we know, and that's not what's best for kids. We spend a lot of money on interventions to keeping them, in regular ed and all that, and we don't get extra money for that. And I'm sure that's what we all do out there. So it's not about over-identifying. It's just about covering the costs so that we can have more funds in our general fund so that we can do more interventions and keep more kids out of special ed.
Yeah, more of those tier 1 types of things so we can help stop that from happening.
Brian, I appreciate you bringing it up, but that is one of the more frustrating arguments for us that we have to keep batting down. The idea that we're going to over-identify kids in order to generate revenue. I mean, the ethical issues aside, and they are significant, the idea that we'd strike upon this brilliant business model to spend $1 in order to get 60% reimbursement on that dollar. I mean, what business runs on that model? It's so mind-numbingly illogical. It's just frustrating. We have to keep knocking it back down.
Well, we're not even at 60%, right? We're at 30%.
Right. Well, yeah, it's been brought up as an argument against the 60% reimbursement rate, but it's just it's nonsense, and don't give it any weight.
It's
So
not a
that
business plan for us to open up a special needs scholarship program of our own.
Well, from a private perspective, they are getting 90%, aren't they? From
yes,
the private schools.
with an
So,
opportunity to go beyond that as well.
right. So, guess we know how we rate.
Well, let's keep our eye on 60% special ed. Just keep banging away at it. Keep it simple. Okay, let's move on. Low revenue ceiling, also versus special ed categorical. No thanks. This came from one of the smaller of the advocacy groups. I think this was Association for Equity and Funding put out something saying, we really think you'd be way better off going with the low revenue ceiling increase for that subset of districts that need that, instead of making special ed categorical your top priority. I don't know. I mean, we certainly read their stuff with interest, but yes, just flat out disagree, like violently disagree with that logic. We try to do the most good for the most kids in the most districts. That's our advocacy. And special ed categorical obviously is designed to do just that. Most money for the most kids in the most districts, because it backs into regular ed, of course. So low revenue ceiling had some nice gains last time. But yeah, not interested in that argument at all. How about you guys? Oh, I can also mention that when the low revenue ceiling went up last time, all the voucher schools got a huge win because they have Me Too clauses, and meaning their amount per pupil rose with the low revenue ceiling. It's interesting how the voucher community wants to be decoupled in some instances when it's favorable, and then decoupled when it's favorable. They're very opportunistic that way. But anyway, I just think it's another distractor, and I wouldn't really buy into it personally.
No, I think it's just important to stay focused on the 60%, right?
Yeah, we just bring these up because these are things you might be hearing. We're certainly hearing them, and just want to give you our frank opinion about it. Okay, so those are a couple of state issues. Let's go federal for a couple of items here. So federal revenues for 25-26. There's been a little news on title recently. And we had some folks who were like worried about should I even count on Title I or Title II or IDEA funding for next year? And I think our answer is status quo would be kind of what most people are doing here. There is the danger of overreacting to rumor and political tumult and so on. What are you guys doing about it?
Yeah, we're definitely doing status quo, just hanging in there. We are obviously looking at our estimates. So if there's some modifications or changes that we're getting, we are going down a little bit in Title I funds. So we're budgeting that, but just doing like we would normal on any other year basis at this point. Also being aware, though, I guess, of all these pools of money and knowing them. So as you read different bills from the federal level, you kind of can anticipate some impact. But other than that, from a budgeting perspective, staying status quo.
Okay. Brian?
Right now, I was a little worried about Title II because there was no mention on it. But interesting enough, in the new AI education bill that the federal government will control for all school districts across the country, which is weird to me because I thought it was state's job to educate kids, but I'll keep that to myself, I guess. But they did mention Title II funding in there that would be used to educate to provide PD to our staff for AI. So I don't think that they're looking at making the money go away. But yeah, I mean, there's always the decreases based on your free and well, so Titles II, everyone may or may not know, it's not based on your free and reduced rate. It's based on the census data, and then there's also there's a huge issue with the title formula, and there has been for decades. It doesn't go to totally benefit the districts that it should go to.
Yeah.
So, but no one wants to fix it. Um, but that's a side note. I'd say Medicaid would be another thing that we're watching. We haven't done anything differently with that, but I would imagine that by October we'll have different amounts for our budget in there.
Okay. Yeah, good point. When I was in your chair, I was always, you face this decision of if you take a super conservative, risk adverse budgeting position and say we're going to count on no federal revenues, then to balance your 27 fund, you have to increase your transfer, which then knocks your general fund out of whack. And then you could back into making some cuts that you really didn't need to make. And that's what I always worry about, like needlessly disrupting the instructional side
Yep.
by that kind of thing. And frankly, the world has changed in K-12. 15 years ago, or 20 years, well, whatever, around that area, you could lay off staff and then bring them back. Like it was like this sort of flexible. It's not flexible anymore. You lay off staff, you'll probably never see them again. We just don't have the staffing reserves to behave that way.
Well, the impact that it has on the culture of the organization too, you have to be aware of that, right?
Yeah, terrible, terrible message. We value you until we don't. So that's why some restraint, I think, is called for here. And don't overreact to these federal screaming headlines. And besides, there's going to be another one every week, it seems, at least until the next federal budget is passed. So
Which I mean, we were talking about like we could all be running a deficit by October.
yeah,
And like we can't plan for it for all the reasons we said. I mean, we're going to just have to go a year. I mean, we do have the majority of districts do have fund balance. And again, I'm not advocating on running your budget on fund balance for long term, but I mean, we have
right.
it that we could use it for 1 year. I know boards are going to be frustrated. But thankfully, also next year, we're coming up into a 2-cycle referendum year.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, it happens. We do have reserves. I would just start talking to the board about that.
A great point. Yeah. Reason number one these days to have a substantial fund balance. The greater the uncertainty in your revenue stream, the more you need a fund balance. So, yeah. So we're cautioning folks to take a sort of a don't panic view on federal revenues for 25, 26. And if we're wrong, it was Brian who said it first. So remember that. Okay, so last month we had on Tom McCarthy was kind enough to join us from DPI, and he talked about this letter that went from Department of Education to DPI to all the DPIs around the country, saying, you in order to remain eligible for certain federal funds, you have to sign this certificate that essentially you were forswearing, any DEI type initiatives and language and whatever. And that became a big deal, and then it wasn't like overnight, it got blocked in court, and it was like this giant, like, never mind type of thing, it's kind of frustrating to get kind of knocked around with issues like this. But as of now, it's a never mind. Wait until you hear something else, but you don't have to deal with that issue right now. Okay, so while there is a budget process going on at the state, there is at the same time what I guess they would call a regular legislative session, which deals with non-budget issues. This is how the state legislature works. And so now we're going to step over into that area. There are at least two bills proposing to restrict school district referenda. Parens, because they keep winning, apparently. And this is, again, there's some frustration here. If the schools were just funded properly, we wouldn't have to do the referenda in the first place. So these guys are creating the rules on the front end, and then we're reacting, and then they want to change the rules on the back end. It's just, this is no way to run a $16 billion enterprise. So we take a really dim view of these restricting issues. Let the people decide, for goodness sake. And if you put proposals out there that your community disagrees with, they're going to lose. And I could point to a lot of them that have. It works. Democracy works. So I feel like that these are just sort of anti-K-12, kind of sour grapes bills, in my opinion. And we don't want to give any energy to these. I think this is a mistake. It's a bad approach. And one of them at least seems to be rooted in the idea that we're just fooling everybody. When you win, it's because you fooled the voters. You either understated the cost, or if you have, let's say, a $50 million construction project for, let's say, a new middle school, that you really should list it as a $120 million cost for a middle school, because you have to include all 20 years of future interest payments, as if you could even measure that. It's just that kind of stuff. It's just like, really?
Well, and the beauty of the system, right, is if you were to do that, right, you would never pass another referendum. So the accountability exists at the local level. So I think that's what we need to counter with.
Yeah.
Isn't this all about local control?
Right.
Yes, or controlling local control, I think would be more the point, right? I think that there should be a companion bill that says any lawmaker that chooses to sell their home has to list it not at its asking price of $275,000, but that plus all the future interest that a future buyer will have to make on their 30-year mortgage to buy your house. So you can go ahead and list it at $600,000. Same logic, right?
Yep.
Otherwise you're fooling the buyer. Well, we're letting it fly this morning on Money Talks. I guess we have to do our disclaimer again. Those are just our opinions. Okay, this last one is a warning for all of you who are responsible for building budgets. Remember this from last fall, where we had this Act 12, which had to do with personal property taxes. And it was a revenue issue for school districts. It was a legislative action. The proceeds from the personal property taxes were paid to the school districts last fall, outside the revenue limit. And that was like the surprise. because it was not clear at all as to whether those proceeds would go inside the revenue limit or outside. And we were really happy that they were outside. That did some good for a lot of districts. But this is just a warning, especially for those districts who received a lot. It's not a reliable recurring revenue at this point. It could turn into that, but it might not be. So don't be surprised if in 25, 26 or 26, 27, it reverts to inside the revenue limit. We don't know, but we know that there's a little smoke around this issue, and that might mean there's some fire around it. We don't really know. The best you could do at this point is be aware. And this had a really interesting effect around the state. There was districts for whom this is no big deal, and there are some districts where it was a huge deal. So, right, it's kind of like it's a revenue with an asterisk on it. Like don't count on this one. So if you attached a lot of recurring spending to it, you might be working your revenue and expenditure balance pretty hard this summer, trying to figure that one out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, two ideas, right? Is do some capital expenditures or something with it, so that you don't have to rely on it, or think about increasing fund balance, like we just said. This is a time to have a decent fund balance.
That's for sure. So all these issues and a bunch more are all sort of on the table for state budget. And if you're really new to this, I mean, in theory, it's supposed to be done by June 30th because the state fiscal year is July 1, just like us. Most years in recent history, it's been a mid to late June story. But before that, this is extended into July once in a while, and in one sort of epic year, it dragged all the way into September. So who
And
knows?
Mike, we got a question about the impact on if it's in the revenue cap. And basically what it means if it's inside the revenue cap, the Act 12 stuff, is that it's just going to lower your property taxes and you're not going to be able to spend it outside of that. So that's the impact of this. And there's actually another component of this that is inside the revenue limit. So that's where it gets a little confusing.
Right.
Sorry to move back, but I saw the question.
Oh, no, I really appreciate you clarifying that. So yeah, there is an element, a recurring element inside the revenue limit. We did a special focus on this last fall because it was outside the limit, which meant it was spendable, flexible, local revenue. I mean, that doesn't happen very often for school districts. So we were all excited about it. And we appreciated DPI going to bat for us on that interpretation of the law. And that was a big win. But again,
What happens when the sausage is made in the middle of the night?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that there's a technical side to law writing and how does A interact with B, and because there was some ambiguity there, we were able to interpret it to our advantage. But again, just don't count on it. Okay. Anything else going on at state level that you think is worthy of mentioning? Anything in the chat?
The only thing that I saw this morning was there was a Facebook post from Governor Evers, who took a shot at the legislature a little bit, and so I'm kind of wondering if it's going to open up a little bit here from that closed negotiation process. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if things are starting to move or if people are digging in, and it's a bad sign.
Right. Oh, the governor's budget was called the Year of the Kid. I hope that theme is what they anchor to in their negotiations. So, of course, they didn't say which kid, now that I think about it. So hopefully it's the Year of the Kids, plural. All right, here we go. Well, given all that, then, interested to see Brian and Andy, just in terms of your communication with your board and through your superintendent, kind of what's the status of your budget for 25, 26? Where'd you leave it with them? Was it like, we'll be back when we know more, or kind of where'd you put it?
I think we made some good faith estimates, kind of as what we knew, basically, kind of in February and March, mostly status quo. Like we talked about before, that's the not overly optimistic by any stretch of the imagination, more on the conservative side of things, but knowing that if we're wrong, then it's going to play itself out, and we'll adjust maybe the following year or that type of thing, because staffing's pretty much set at this point in time. So that's for the most part what we've done for this year. Ross just asked a question in the chat about the state aid estimate that's going to be coming out here soon, and probably need to be thinking about communication related to that, because that will throw people and just say it's kind of a made up number. They have to estimate something, but they don't know what to estimate based on. So
my favorite opportunity for miscommunication, the July 1 aid estimate. Ross probably remembers this. We were together in Madison. We had an equalization aid number that was estimated in the budget that I had put in April or May. And then July 1, the July 1 estimate came out. And this was again 50 something million. The number was off by like 100 grand. And a board member blasted out an email to everybody saying, "What went wrong?" I was like, "Oh, thanks. That's just what I needed." And I was kicking the backside the first day of the new year. So, good point, Ross. You've got to set everybody's expectations up for just what that July 1 announcement is and what it's not. Because the newspapers and other media just get it wrong often. How about you, Brian? Where did you leave it with your board? And sorry, Andy, if you want to jump in.
yeah, I was just going to say, remember, this is a different year than last year, right? Like last year, we knew what the number was in the pot, so to speak, of the budget. This year, we have no clue what's being talked about with joint finance and the governor. So a little bit different this year. All the same components of it, of not knowing, still exist. Maybe the exact dollar amount, but a little bit more ambiguity this year.
A lot more, for sure.
Yeah, I think if you have a mature board too, they should be used to this every other year cadence. That seems like some years are much easier for us to get our budget out. Well, that's because it's the second year of the biennium. And then other years, we're very much in the dark, which I guess from a public standpoint, that could look very odd because they don't understand, the whole state budget thing. How can we figure it out one year and not the other? But our board, we always do staffing in April. So we presented the budget along with it because it kind of makes sense. We'll be adopting our preliminary budget in this June meeting. It won't be to the format that I would like it to be in, but we're a little bit behind. So at least they'll have the numbers. Our board just adopts a high level budget. But they know too, I mean, we're looking at a big deficit right now. We'll fill that hole, hopefully with the Inflation Reduction Act money that will hopefully not be cut off by the time June 30th comes around. But yeah, we just try to communicate with our board. For Menashe's board, they always want to jump to referendum or something. Like you say, well, we're going to be having this deficit. And they're like, well, we're going to go to referendum. Like, whoa, settle down. We have some time. And so we will probably be looking at a referendum this next year. But again, we want to look at what the state budget, because I mean, when we get the 60% for special ed, we could probably push that referendum off for a year or two.
Oh, you're an optimist. I'm glad to hear that.
I feel like that's all we can do, right?
Right. Well, at least the state Supreme Court upheld the governor's use of his partial veto powers to keep the $325 in place on the revenue limit. I think that I shouldn't be surprised by this, but I sort of am. The $325 on the revenue side, at least as far as the legislature is concerned, seems to have become a ceiling and not a floor. Well, you got your 325, you're not getting a penny more. This kind of grudging, miserly approach to funding K-12 is still the status quo among several legislators. So, but at least the 325 is there. And that's one little island of certainty in an otherwise really mixed up picture.
And like
Yeah.
I really try to do this time too, sorry, Andy, to really think about the budget too and things that could go away. Like, we get money for the social work, mental health. And you really need to make sure that you didn't reduce a social worker because that'll affect your aid. I got a little caught off guard on that this year because I forgot that we reduced one last year. And the aid, the tier one aid really isn't that much, but the tier two aid, which is crazy, is an obscene amount of money because there's just not a whole lot of districts, that qualify for it. So it's just something like just think about that because that was like I think $250,000 for us around there. So just thinking about those other things in your budget that you may look fine, but there may be things that are hiding.
Right. Boy, I hated when I lost revenue because there's not much you can do about it, you know. Expenditure side is something different, but you got to get to 100% on revenues when you're budgeting. Okay, well, it sounds like you guys are you've obviously kept your board up to date and taken it as far as you can. But let's say who knows? Let's say the governor and the legislature work something out like last year, it just pops up out of nowhere. How do you resume that discussion and when? Do you do like the okay, here's what this means for us report? I assume maybe you pick that up at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, or do you do a special memo, or um, how do you get your board to kind of, and your superintendent and the leadership team to understand where you're at?
Yeah, I think the first thing to just talk to everybody about is, we need to dive into this a little bit, right? Because there's a lot of small print that gets put in these documents. And so talking to your peers, looking at the SAA analysis, perhaps looking at the actual legislation, there's lots to be gleaned from there. So I think the first message that you want to go is, hey, I need a little bit of time just to kind of figure this out. So don't rush to provide some information that might be wrong. Just tell everybody I need a little bit of time to kind of work through this and then give some better analysis with it because it will be just a lot of energy at one point in time. And you kind of got to diffuse that a little bit to kind of pull it apart.
Yeah.
And I agree totally with you, Andy. Especially for the school board, with our leadership team, our central leadership team, the kind of the executive council, we'll have more fluid discussions on, this is where we think it's going to be, but, we meet weekly, so I can, kind of update them on changes throughout that week. But yeah, with the board, just want to make sure that everything's a done deal and that we fully understand it because this isn't when they release a state budget, it's not like a one-page document that's all the changes. Like these are hundreds and hundreds of pages, and it seems like schools kind of get scattered throughout the different areas too. Like, we could be getting money from like the Department of Corrections for some reason. Like, and we wouldn't know that, or we would have to pay something. And, like it's not like, D isn't looking across everything. It's like some of the stuff is just like, oh yeah, it was in there. And so it takes time to digest and obviously the high level flashy stuff you know pretty quickly, but there's a lot of hidden things that may have big impacts that we just don't know about. Thankfully for us, our board meeting, we only have one board meeting a month during the summer. So it provides some breathing room.
The other thing to keep in mind is we seem to be in this weird situation because of the power of the veto pen, right? Where the legislation kind of does separate legislation on some things and then the budget bill, and they can have an impact on each other. And so it was a little bit of a mess, quite honestly, last time trying to figure all that out. And so when you get into that situation, you got to be cognizant of both sides of the equation, not only the budget, but what other legislation's passed. And the legislature is doing that basically so that they can kind of protect some things from the veto pen that can happen in the budget. So just be aware that that's going on at the same time.
Oh, I bet they're going to be super wary of partial vetoes going forward. I think a lot of legislators were not pleased with how that $325 thing went last time. So yeah, they're going to be extra careful. I don't blame them.
But
Um,
I think it's really, I mean, it's really going to make it that the budget. I mean, I think that's why we kind of are, heard rumblings that the budget's not even going to be passed because they're just they're so terrified that he's going to use that pen to
right.
change something that, we're almost at a standstill, and immobilized because of that. I mean, it, we just, I just believe we just need to govern. I mean, it's negotiations. Like it used to happen, you know, we do our jobs, they need to do their jobs.
Yeah. Well, my big takeaway from this is I really appreciate both of you saying, take your time, read it carefully. Don't rush out some analysis that afternoon, even if your superintendent thinks that that's what you should do. Um, because yeah, often it takes a couple of weeks before there's a consensus around the interpretation of what was passed. And you don't want to get ahead of that. So
And I would say
And
too, like know the people that you're talking to. I mean, and I'm not knocking superintendents or anything, like if your superintendent's going to freak out by you saying something, maybe it's you need to slow roll the information there too until you fully understand things. I mean, if your superintendent doesn't like whiplashes or that, like you just need to know who you're talking to.
right,
Because I mean, no one likes to hear, we have a $500,000 surplus, and then 2 days later, oh, it's $1 million deficit.
right,
Oh, and then we're balanced. No, we're not balanced. Like,
yeah,
just take your time. It's fine. Know your if you want to run things past them and they fully understand that's fine. But we have a lot of peers that you can run things by, and no one judges here.
right. Great advice.
to
Okay.
some de- to some degree, having that plan in place, kind of even from spring, just stick with that, right? Like, let's not make any huge decisions one way or another. Just stay with that plan. Figure out what the impact's going to be. Give it some time, but let's not rush into a new program or a new project or something if we think we have some flexibility. Just slow
Right.
roll.
Yeah. And the other path there, Andy, is well, we just got a bad state budget, so let's lay the lumber on the staff. You can't, you
Right.
know, you can't handle it that way. It's a long-term relationship, and you got to be very careful with it. So,
Yeah. And to Andy's point too, I would rather put maybe more funds in utilities or Fund 46 to kind of hold them back, that we know that we can use before saying we have, a $500,000 to spend, and then curriculum is like, oh great, we'll hire, four more interventionists. Totally support hiring four more interventionists, but let's figure out first and see how long term. It's like the Act 12 money that we were talking about. If we would have just went out and hired interventionists, then are we gonna let them go next year if the money goes away?
right,
Well,
right,
think about Act 20 and the reading money that we were supposed to get and then we never did.
right,
There's things that can change. Think about the second year of the biennium. You might have an idea what that's going to do to your district. Maybe you want to hold back a little bit and try to blunt some of the impact of that if it's a negative. Think long term.
Good stuff, guys. Okay. Well, let's shift a little bit here as we wrap it up. It's not all state budget. A well-planned summer means you might get out for that weekend camping trip because you planned it well, right? You planned your summer well. What's on your agendas and what's your approach? Both doing well for the district, but also giving yourself a break.
Yeah, I'm a big Stephen Covey fan, the sharpen the saw concept, right? You need to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. So planning those vacations ahead of time. Last couple of years, my wife and I have been doing the cruise circuit. So we've got a nice cruise plan. We had to book that a long time ago. So I'm actually going to be missing one of the summer board meetings because they kind of changed it up on me. Instead of doing the second one, they decided they're going to have the first one, and darn it, that's just not working for me. So unfortunately, I have a non-refundable deposit. So we're going to be doing that this year. And I think, just communicating that with everybody and trying to kind of plan around your plans so that you can get away. That's a good thing.
I'm just trying to figure out which SPF I should go with, if it should be 15 or 30. I mean, this is really stressing me out right now. But in all seriousness, today's the last day of school for Menasha, and I just found out last night from the police chief that I don't think we have any SROs in our district because they're all training or doing other things. So I knock on wood that for the next, 3 hours we'll be fine. But uh, there's just there's a lot going on. Everyone's preparing for the audit, finalizing budget stuff, grant claims. Remember, you should all be doing grant claims monthly, or you should have been, and kind of still operating like that, kind of going forward. But just getting all that stuff in line, because we all know audits are coming up here soon, and always feel free to reach out to a neighbor if you're struggling or anything. But it's a busy time. On top of all that, a lot of us have sports that are going on, and kids are going all over the state, and those are wrapping up, and will wrap up in 2 weeks or so. I think most state stuff is like in the middle of June. But it's a lot.
Yeah. Make
Yeah.
sure you take care of your payroll person, right? Payroll is under a lot of stress in June.
Yeah, summer pays.
Yeah, all that. And then somebody dumps summer school payroll on you and it's not properly organized and coded, and then summer school person's tearing their hair out. So extra attention on payroll in June. Be good to your payroll person.
Plus, I mean, you have all those facility projects that are starting to ramp up and things. I mean, the good thing is like, yes, we have all this work, but we need to take a step back. And like, I know next week we won't have 300 staff in our buildings. So, I mean, that's a lot of workload that's removed, just by them not being there, because they're not going to be email, like they're gone. If you need anything from them, they're gone. But that's fine. Like it gives us more time to kind of dig in and, get dug out. Um, and then
Yeah.
we'll miss the kids in a couple of weeks and want them back, but it's not how it works.
I tell everybody we work during the summer, but when the kids aren't here, there's less likely chance for emergencies and those things that just kind of pop up. So you can usually be able to focus more on some of the longer range projects that you have. That's the benefit of it.
That's great. A lot of people associate late spring with like the smell of flowers and lilacs. I've always associated with the smell of the ammonia-based floor wax remover in the schools. It's like, the smell of spring. It smells like ammonia. Well, hey guys, this has been a really great discussion. If you'll bear with me, I got a couple of announcements from WASBO, and then we're going to let everybody get on with their Fridays. First, thanks to everybody who was a part of a terrific spring conference. We had like 350, 400 people, couple hundred golfers. We did eventually recover all of the hikers after a Herculean effort involving several helicopters. That all went great. The June 12th game at the Brewer game on June 12th is like WASBO night at the Brewer game. We sold that out. Sorry if you're still looking for tickets, but we sold 230 tickets for our area of Miller Park, and it went fast. What a fantastic thing. Because, frankly, we usually don't see each other between the spring conference and fall conference, like half the year, really. So nice to be able to get together in June at the ball game. There are some summer custodial conferences I want to mention because there's a little different twist to them. The first is at Oregon on June 25th. Andy, I hope they have that right, 25th. There's two things going on. There's the regular summer custodial conference, which is a great way to reward your custodial crews, by the way, and it's great learning. They don't get a lot of it elsewhere. So if you can, send your team to Oregon. That's one of 4 locations. And Greg Gard, the UW basketball coach, is going to be the speaker that day, which is great. There's also the day before something called a Lead Custodial Academy, which we've not done before. But there's a need for those custodians who are getting promoted onto day shift and having to work with kids and teachers and principals. It's really focused on that. It's a great idea. That one, I'm sorry, is sold out. But there's also July 16th at Bangor. We have both the custodial conference and the lead custodian academy, which is that one's not sold out at Bangor. So if you can make that drive, that would be a nice alternative way to do it. We'll be in Amory on July 23rd and Elkhorn on July 30th. So again, a great way to reward your hardworking custodial staff with some good PD. So until June 12th, we'll see some of you at the ball game. But we'll be back on with Money Talks in June. If the state budget does develop, we might move the date up or back, but we'll be on in June. We're taking July off as part of Andy's COVID theory that we should maybe take care of a little bit. So thanks again for joining us, Andy, Brian. Always a pleasure to see you guys, and see you down the road.
Well, thanks. Enjoy the end of the school year, everyone.